This is a big deal. Lin-Manuel Miranda is here with us on TCM for the first installment of season 2 of 2 for 1. You've programmed a terrific double feature. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, because we're here in large part because of you, tell us where we are.
Well, Ben, thank you for coming up to Washington Heights.
Yeah.
We are in one of the jewels of New York City, the United Palace Theater, which began its life. I mean, look at how dramatic this is. This looks fake. It's real. And it's on 175th and Broadway. But it began its life as a Lowe's Wonder Theater. One was built in every borough. This is the Manhattan one, and it's been lovingly preserved. For many years, it was Reverend Ike's church. He would televise locally his Sunday sermons, and so that's why it's still in such great condition, is it never stopped being used. When he passed, his son took it over as a church and cultural center in 2012, and that's when I got involved and helped them buy a new screen and some projectors so that we could play movies at the Palace again.
You grew up very close to here. This is your hood.
Yeah, I walked here today.
Yeah. Oh, you did?
That's pretty exciting for me. And I didn't go to Reverend Ike's church as a kid, so I wasn't aware this was here until a friend introduced me to the theater in 2012. My wife's parents used to come here when it was a church. And so to basically let the world know that we have this incredible theater up here with special events has been really meaningful.
This will be obvious to some. You said welcome to Washington Heights, your first Broadway show in the Heights, set in Washington Heights.
Yeah,
right?
and lucky enough to have the film's premiere actually in this theater, and that was very meaningful.
So 2 for 1, where we bring in artists like yourself to program 2 movies that connect in some way for you. We've got The Bandwagon tonight, followed by All That Jazz. And I'm going to guess, before I even let you explain why you picked these 2, that these are both really high-quality films about the artistic process, right? About putting something together, which seems to be like that is what you do. Figure out how to make something that's in your head work.
Yeah, and specifically, both these films are about the messy art of making musicals.
Right, specifically how sloppy that process is.
It's a committee process. And I think of the quote by my friend and mentor, John Weidman, who said, smart guys like us don't have dumb ideas and mess up musicals. Guys like us have smart ideas and mess up musicals. The Bandwagon, really it's about all these collaborators coming in with very different ideas of what the show should be. And they crash together. It does not work. You've got a ballet dancer who wants to have herself taken seriously. You've got a Hollywood actor who's coming back to Broadway with his tail between his legs. You've got a very Orson Welles-coded director who is starring and acting, and he hears about this sort of light musical comedy and says, it's a modern-day Faust. And you actually see different sensibilities crash into each other with just incredible music and some of the greatest stars of that era.
You got Fred Astaire, you have Sid Charisse, and you have Jack Buchanan, who, if you haven't seen The Bandwagon, maybe is somewhat unfamiliar. He's kind of amazing.
There's nothing in the world as soothing as a smash hit.
He is amazing, and he plays a very recognizable type to anyone who's ever worked in theater who believes they're making the greatest thing in God's creation when they're making this thing, and very pretentious. And to the movie's credit, they never villainize him. He's on the wrong track. He's got the wrong take on this material. And also, the sort of screen marriage of Fred Astaire and Sid Charisse is such an interesting one. They're very different dancers, and they make hay of that even in the plot of the movie. He keeps measuring himself against her. He's like, is she taller than me?
Is anything wrong?
Oh, no. Pretty shoes.
You know, she's got much more of a ballet training, and so the first moment when they for real dance together, and it's not a musical number inside the musical, they take that incredible stroll through Central Park. The choreography, I think it's by Michael Kidd, is so incredible because you see them in real time figuring out how their bodies move together, and it's one of the most beautiful sequences ever.
One of my favorite scenes in any classic musical is in this, and it's not a musical number, as people know me would expect. It is that wonderful scene where Jack Buchanan wants Sid Charisse, who's this famous ballerina, and everybody in Broadway wants her to be in their show, to become a Broadway star. And he invites her boyfriend, a choreographer, to see him in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m., to come to his apartment. And that scene, no spoilers, the manipulation of how he tricks that guy into getting Sid Charisse, it's masterful.
Yeah.
It's as good as it gets.
And
I
it
love
accomplishes two things at once. One, this show is headed for disaster because
Right.
no one's in it for the right reasons. And two, this guy's a really good director.
He's right. That's right. He's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's watch it, and then Lin-Manuel Miranda and I will be back afterwards to discuss it. From MGM in 1953, directed by Vincent Minnelli, here are Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse, and Jack Buchanan in the bandwagon. Back with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Thank you for hosting us here in your neighborhood and inviting us to this beautiful theater, United Palace Theater in Washington Heights in New York. So the bandwagon, you know, Fred Astaire, he didn't like the reason why it said that he didn't kiss Ginger Rogers more in their films together was he didn't like the mushy stuff. And it feels like that is very much on display here.
Oh, yeah.
Where at the end of the movie, it's like, all right, so I get it. We have to fall in love. Can we just get this part over with?
Yeah. At the same time, I always tell people I would love for I think anyone would love for the last scene of their life to be the last scene of this movie where, you know, he's like, did anyone come? Did anyone come with flowers? No. And he thinks he's by himself again. And there's everyone he's been working with sings for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Then he gets a big old kiss from Sid Charisse. His friends sing That's Entertainment, and the movie's over.
No,
what a way to go.
It is a beautiful, beautiful ending. So you mentioned at the beginning that you picked two musicals, this one, the one we have coming up next, All That Jazz, because it's about how difficult it is and how sloppy it can be to put together a Broadway musical. But it's really almost any movie, you know?
Yeah.
I quote Seth Rogen all the time, who I heard on Howard Stern, but when Howard asked him about, does he read bad reviews, do they bother him? And he was like, of course I read them. And of course they bother me. But he goes, the truth is, I'm amazed when any movie is good at all. There's so many moving parts. It's so hard to
get everyone rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, that's right. And to overcome it when sometimes they just won't, right? And then to end up with something that matters to people.
What I particularly love about this movie is it really is about these clashing artistic sensibilities that finally get on the same page and make the same show. The show they present, what is this show about?
Right.
It has these incredible musical numbers that almost couldn't be staged on stage. And by the way, like any fans of Michael Jackson, you'll see all of Smooth Criminal was inspired by this murder ballad mystery that is the last third of the musical they present in the bandwagon, down to the white suit and the toughs he fights through dance. But it's really this remarkable kind of show off how many great different kinds of numbers can Vincent Minnelli put in one movie.
There's a lot of funny moments in this movie. When Astaire's on the phone and it ends up he's talking to the maid and he thinks he's being honest with Jack Buchanan.
Yeah, he has a whole tirade.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is the chambermaid.
Yeah, and then there he is listening. It's just a lovely little reveal. And then, because they didn't villainize Jack Buchanan, they made him a little silly and a little obtuse, and he's not seeing what other people are seeing. But this is an artist, and he realizes there's another way to go.
I admit I had the wrong idea, Tony.
Right, and that's great. You're in charge. Tell me what to do. I want to be part of it.
Yeah, and yeah, the fact that he wants to be part of it is really, that's the part I love about it, because I think that is something that I find is true of so many theater artists. We just want to be a part of where the good stuff is happening. And the fact that he's presented as this Orson Welles-like sort of egomaniac, but it's actually not about the ego, it's about the art, is a lovely grace note.
It feels like, and I don't know, so you tell me where I'm wrong here, but you wrote the seeds of In the Heights in college?
Yeah, it was an 80-minute one act I wrote my sophomore year in college.
Right, and then by the time you finished writing, what you then took to where, Connecticut first to test it?
we did a summer at the O'Neill Theater Workshop in 2005.
2005, so it had already changed significantly.
Oh, there's 5 notes this thing shares from college to Broadway, and it's dun 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 dun. Everything else got rewritten.
And that's because you brought in other people who had other ideas,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And you would think, oh wait, that's good.
I met
like
Tommy
that.
Kail, our director, in 2002. I started working with our book writer, Chiara Hudes, in 2004. And everyone helped make the best idea in the room win.
And you're off Broadway in 2007, which is how many years after your one act?
It's 8 years.
8 years, and then
yeah. 7 years. 7 years.
And then the next year it's on Broadway.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it was my 20s. It was a good way to spend my 20s.
Lynn, thanks very much. We will discuss your roaring 20s as the night continues. Don't go away, because Lin-Manuel Miranda and I will return in not too long with the back half of his double feature. We'll have All That Jazz from 1979 next on TCM.
Showtime.
Lin-Manuel Miranda is here again. Thanks for doing this, Lin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me,
It
Ben.
means a lot to everybody at TCM that you took time out to be with us. And to be with us here. This is your neighborhood, Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan and at the United Palace Theater.
Yeah, thank you, TCM, for coming uptown. This is the jewel of Washington Heights on 175th and Broadway, and we're very proud to have it and always excited to sort of let folks in on this New York secret.
Yeah, it should not be a secret. This is as glorious a theater as you are going to stumble into.
Yeah, my favorite Tony Awards were the one year where they held it here, and I got to watch the Tony Awards and then walk home.
Oh, how many of those do you have? You got 2 of those? What do you got?
I have 3 of those, 4 if you count. We got a special Tony for Freestyle of Supreme.
I'm afraid that doesn't count. I'm looking at the rules right here. Okay, so we can go ahead and say you got 4 of those. All right, we just had The Bandwagon. Now we have All That Jazz. Another film about how difficult it is to make a musical, also how difficult it is inside of that to make a movie. Here's Roy Scheider as Joe Gideon standing in for Bob Fosse, editing a film while trying to cast and create a Broadway show.
And the snapshots we get sort of with this back-to-back with The Bandwagon of putting together a musical back then to the 1970s. And, you know, I think one of the things that's so remarkable about this movie is that opening sequence, which is set on Broadway, that basically does the plot of a chorus line in about 5 exhilarating minutes. We watch Joe Gideon holding a dance call, which is the most exciting place to be in New York at any given time.
Is that right?
A dance call for a Broadway show where you just see all these incredible dancers learning combinations and being thrown up on stage at warp speed.
Are there really that many dancers on stage at one time?
Yeah, I've never been to an open dance call that's actually on a stage.
Right.
Yeah,
Where would it be? It would be
in a giant rehearsal room,
rehearsal hall,
or a
okay,
dance space. But yeah, it's 75 to 100 folks at a call.
How can you tell who's? There must be occasionally some good dancers who get kicked out because you can't see everybody. You can't.
Yeah, well, you come up in groups.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
you know, it's...
Everybody gets a chance at the front of the line,
Yeah, there's
generally.
a bit of a rivalry between Michael Bennett and Bob Fosse, and so the fact that...
Michael Bennett did chorus
Who
line.
did chorus line, and so the fact that this sequence exists is almost like I can do chorus line.
Right,
You
I
want to
can
see a chorus line? I'll show you a chorus line. It'll be the opening sequence. And all of the little asides in it. But yeah, everyone learns a combination. You have someone move up, you have some folks move back, and then you see it in groups of 6 or groups of 5.
I was also struck by, again, Joe Gideon is the name of the director here that Roy Scheider plays, but the film's directed by Bob Fosse, and Gideon is clearly a version of Bob Fosse, and maybe not...
And the real giveaway is the movie he's editing, which is very
Yeah,
clearly a Lenny Bruce-ish movie.
Right, Bob Fosse directed Lenny, and here it's called The Stand-Up. There's no doubt what this movie is about, and I'm going to guess, because Fosse is directing it, the kindness that he has, he is very gentle with the dancers who he rejects, which is not the traditional Hollywood portrayal. It's harsh, you know, 2, 3, and 6, other rest of you bye, right? And that may happen, but I was curious what your sense is of how many directors would be that gentle with those who did not make it.
Yeah, no, I think that Bob probably prided himself on that. He's certainly ungentle in other ways and areas of his personal life.
Right.
But I think there's a part of him that always sees himself as a dancer, and it could always all go away. And I think we see that in the flashbacks. I mean, it's a very painfully autobiographical film, and they cut to sequences of him as a child kind of being made to entertain and being, at times, the breadwinner. So I think he has a great amount of love for dancers, and that shows in his manner towards them. But it's interesting what he chooses, where he chooses to make himself a monster and where he chooses to make himself
Yeah,
a
well,
nice guy.
you end up being, and I mean, human beings, we end up sort of taking advantage most of the people who give us the most rope, right?
Yeah.
And those are inevitably the people who love us most. So it's a peculiar way that we go through life as humans. And Bob Fosse / Joe Gideon is like humanity on steroids.
Yes, and there is a great deal of paranoia. I remember reading Kander and Ebb, who worked with Bob Fosse on Chicago, where All That Jazz takes its title from. They wrote a book called Colored Lights, and they talked about how the songwriting team was portrayed in All That Jazz, because it's kind of supposed to be them, maybe.
Right.
And they, I think Fred Ebb says, I remember getting a call from Bob saying, when I had my heart attack, you wanted to be replaced, right? You talked about replacing me. And John and Fred were like, we never talked about it, but we
Right,
love
yeah.
you very much, and we wanted you to get better and come back to us. And he goes, oh, well, I remember something about that. So it was, you know, some of this is, the paranoia has to be taken with a great deal of salt.
Lin, thanks. This is, I could talk to you. I like everything you say. I feel like I'm learning something. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
It's probably true for most of them as well. But now we're going to watch the film. Here it is. And then we'll be back afterwards to discuss it. From 1979, directed by Bob Fosse, Roy Scheider leading a remarkable cast in all that jazz. Back here with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Yeah, that is, that's an ending. There's no, and that's acceptance, right? Like you, all right, I'm going to do a big musical number. I get it. This is,
Well,
I get to say goodbye to people in the way that I want to say goodbye to people.
Well, what's remarkable, and I'm glad we're doing these as a double feature, is Fosse essentially wrote himself the ending of The Bandwagon, but his own version of it.
Oh,
it's
right.
him getting to sing and dance with all the important people in his life, and they're all in the crowd. And he's got Ben Vereen singing about how he's changed all their lives, but he's created this is the Fosse version of a bandwagon ending.
Right, that great moment when Fred Astaire comes out and they're all singing.
For He's a Jolly Good Fellow.
Right. In 1953, it was for He's a Jolly Good Fellow. In 1979, it's Bye-Bye My Life, Goodbye.
Correct.
Yeah. It's just a great performance from Roy Scheider. I mean, really, an actor I doubt was anybody's instant first thought for who should play Bob Fosse.
Yeah, I think the first person they approached and backed out pretty quickly was Richard Dreyfuss. So it's weird how many actors for this came out of the Jaws pool.
Yeah, right. Did they go to Robert Shaw?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think they
probably not.
skipped
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was the versatility of Roy Scheider to be able to, play, Jaws and also this choreographer. He has to look, he's creating all these dances, and he really put him through paces. One of the things prop dance about the process, making another Bob is, and I think I was an eager student in that regard.
Yeah, and his performance is sensational, partly why this is such a memorable film. But it's not like he's seemingly charming in Jaws. It's you don't see here to remember this sort of, you can totally get why everyone ended up doing what Bob Fosse wanted.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even if they thought it was a bad idea, even if it was asking them to write fairly sizable checks for something they did not understand, this is not a guy that you could easily say no to.
Yeah, and I think what's remarkable is there's sort of a movie and then there's the movie outside the movie. You feel Joe Gideon trying to push at the limits of what musical theater can be. I mean, you'll never see anything on stage as risque as that airline
Right.
musical number, and you watch all the investors sweating, but you also have Bob Fosse outside of this, creating that number and pushing the limits on what a movie musical can hold. And I think this is one of those movies that people who don't like musicals like, because it's
totally.
also
That's right.
just
Yeah.
such a great study in a character, in a very specific kind of showbiz character.
I want to mention Cliff Gorman because his performance as the stand-up comedian in the stand-up, which Joe Gideon is editing while he's putting on the New York-LA show, and Cliff Gorman played Lenny on Broadway and then wasn't famous enough
Right.
to get
So
the
Dustin
role.
Hoffman plays Lenny.
Justin Hoffman plays Lenny, but this is sort of Bob Fosse's way of tipping his hat to stage actors. Like, I'm gonna give the guy a part in a movie.
Yeah,
that you
and
wouldn't.
there's a lot of folks who were really made their bones on stage. Anne Reinking just gives an incredible performance in this movie and was sort of romantically with him at this stage in his life as well, and is kind of playing herself.
She's the #1 mistress.
Yeah.
She's his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah, and her number with his daughter is about as charming and loving a musical number as you'll ever see in the movies.
And Anne Reinking ingratiated herself to not only Bob Fosse, obviously, but also Gwen Verdon and also his daughter. She was sort of accepted as a member of the family.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lin-Manuel Miranda, thank you for coming
you.
in. Your support at TCM means a lot, so thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
Big fan.
Lynn and I are done for the night, but of course the movies continue here on TCM, and as always, they are uncut and commercial-free.